Hello, hello. Let's give it 2 minutes for everyone to join up. I need to join from my other account so I sound good. But yeah, let me get you on stage. 1 second.
Let me turn this down. I forget how good this microphone is. I have to talk in like a library voice, but it's a good mic. It sounds good. Let me make sure my volume's working here. All right. How you doing today, Mental Health Collective? Lewis Finn.
Yeah, not too bad, Mike. Great to be here. I know you said you were going to give it a couple of minutes for people to pour in, and I'd literally just finished work and I was trying to wolf down some food, so I hugely appreciate
Oh, nice. I'm in Istanbul right now, and they have these wet burgers, which are like almost like pita bread buns that are soaked in tomato sauce, and it's a burger. They're so good, but I just ate like 2 of them so fast.
I'll need like a prodding stick or something if you start nodding off. I'm very aware of food naps.
Yeah. And that was a greasy meal. I have meetings after this as well, so I have to stay up.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Obviously, Web3 never stops. It's the time zones that get me. So I'll have like a meeting in a time zone, then I'll get the wrong time zone, and then I'll be like 2 hours ahead, and it's just, time zones.
Yeah, definitely. I travel nonstop, so sometimes I'll be in Vietnam and work until 4 in the morning, and then sometimes I'm in Mexico and I start work at 2 in the morning. It's kind of a crazy life, but I love it.
Yeah, I think the unpredictability is definitely something to make each day different. You definitely don't have too much monotony in Web3.
Yeah, definitely. All right, everyone, be sure to share the space, like the space, retweet the space, send some emojis, get it out there. We'll start in about 1 minute. All right, let's get this started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome back to another X Space hosted by Solve Care. I'm your host, Michael Norton, and today we have a very special guest. This is probably right up everyone's alley because we are speaking on staying sane in a crazy market, and no one better to join us than Lewis Finn from Mental Health Collective. How you doing today, Lewis?
Yeah, great to be here, and I think it is definitely an on-trend subject. Pardon my pun there. But yeah, obviously a lot of things happening in the market, and I know although there can be good times, there could be a lot of bad times as well. So obviously we're going to try and discuss ways, obviously, to look after yourself more and just look after your own mental health.
So tell us a little bit about Mental Health Collective. When did you start? Why did you start? And what do you do?
Absolutely. So I started the Mental Health Collective nearly 3 years ago with my friend Vic. I'm from the UK. He was based in America, and it was around the middle of COVID times. For me personally, I was going through a breakup of a long-term relationship, and obviously with the combined like stress of COVID, I was in a really, really bad place mentally. And at the same time, with COVID and the lockdowns and everything, I couldn't really grieve the relationship as you would in a traditional way. Obviously, usually you'll try and go see your friends, kind of thing. But with everywhere locked down, I was kind of just confined to my four walls. I'd reached out for mental health support through my GP, and unfortunately, there was huge waiting lists, which is completely understandable. But obviously when you're feeling like that, you kind of looking for any kind of outlook just to kind of feel better. And it was around the time I think Spaces had started. And I met Vic online just randomly in a space. And we just started hosting space, I think, just for people to kind of, I know a lot of people were going through a lot of difficult things at that time. So we just kind of started opening rooms and holding space just for anybody who was struggling, really. And over the time of doing it, I got a lot myself from hosting the spaces. And at the same time, we just saw the feedback we were getting from everybody else. So we continued doing the spaces, and we figured the next step was to become a charity. So we became a registered 501c3 charity. And we've been doing it consistently now. Like, as I said, for nearly 3 years, we've hosted over 750 spaces. And we don't offer advice or anything like that. We just provide a space where people can share, and just kind of talk through whatever they're dealing with. I know a lot of the times, in men especially, it's hard having just reaching out to people close to you in terms of like social circles. Obviously, there's fear of repercussions, but the beauty of Twitter, with it all being online and you've got that degree of anonymity, we've actually found that people are the most honest and authentic selves. So the goal of what we're doing is to get in a position where we can run this 24/7 and just provide space for anybody who's struggling. As I said, we're not a replacement for medical services, but we feel it definitely helps just from the feedback we've received and from my own journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually went through a similar thing during lockdown, which provoked me to sell everything I own and start traveling the world. But I know not everyone can do that, so it's wonderful to have that kind of a space where you feel safe and you can talk through it. Just curious, what you know you've probably encountered quite a lot during your 750 spaces, a lot of time. Do you have like a regular group that joins you? Do you have pop-ins, anything like that?
Yeah, well, the main thing, obviously, the main thing about what we're doing, we want it to always be free and accessible, but it's the consistency as well. So currently, at the moment, we're hosting Monday to Wednesdays, same time every day. You can follow this account, find out more, check the website. We put all the space links on Monday. Um, but yeah, we try to be consistent and keep it the same time every day. And anybody can drop in. I usually am hosting the rooms, and there's no pressure to come up and speak. People just kind of drop in, have a listen to the room, and then we find that over a few like spaces, they actually build up the confidence to come up and share. But anybody's welcome, and there's no like prerequisites or anything like that.
That's wonderful. Now in Web3, you get a lot of people who are, investing into small projects. There's hacks, there's all sorts of things. And you see these posts on Reddit and even on X, like I just got drained my whole life savings and just these horrible things. And that you see a lot of people supporting them, writing messages of support. But, in a time of, when it just feels like everything's out to get you and you feel all alone, aside from joining a group and discussing it, what other like tools and tips have you learned along the way to help you cope with something like that?
I think there's a lot of factors. Obviously, within like the NFT scene, especially at the moment, I think it's quite quiet. A lot quieter than it was. But I mean, I remember at the peak of the last bull. I think the main thing that people had to be wary of was obviously the FOMO. Nobody wanted to miss the next mint kind of thing. Um, and at the same time, just like you say, you've got to be wary of hacks, just not opening any like malicious links. Um, and I think as well, just being mindful of obviously what you're investing. I mean, I know a few people who like trade regularly and stuff, and they always say if you're ever in a position where you're constantly checking your phone or your computer, and maybe you're a bit over exposed, should I say? But yeah, as well, I think, as I said, it's not so prevalent as it was. But another one as well was tying it into the FOMO. Was with all these like all the projects and stuff are based all over the world. So I know people who are literally up like 20 hours a day, just trying to catch the next main, trying to like catch the next meme coin kind of thing. But at the same time, you're not if you're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night essentially, you're not really in the mindset to be making like big financial decisions. I would argue. I know sleep hugely impacts you, so obviously just make sure you're getting lots of rest and just taking that step back before kind of jumping into any investment.
Yeah, it's kind of like that 24-hour cool down period. In California, if you purchase a car, they give you, I think it's 48 hours that you can walk back in and say, I don't want the car, I changed my mind. And it's because these salespeople are so aggressive, and they'll tell you anything to get you to buy a car, that they actually implemented a 48-hour rule so you can walk back in and there's no fees, no penalties, nothing. You just give the car back to them. And so it's kind of funny to say that, because you feel, when everything's going crazy, crypto moves so fast that even 48 hours seems like, oh, I missed out, so it is tough to balance that, take that break, think about it logically, get some sleep. But at the same time, there's that FOMO, yeah, as you said. And, we're coming up to another market cycle, or most of us believe so. And with interest rates dropping and whatnot, that's usually a key indicator for a good market. And we're going to be coming back to that. So what would you say, aside from sleep and taking a little bit of a break, what would you say you can do in a 30-minute, 1 hour period to kind of calm yourself down and collect your thoughts?
I think any kind of activity, just kind of getting you away from being like in front of the screen or the phone kind of thing, and just getting yourself out of that mindset for a while. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've maybe they've had a bad trade, and then instead of just taking that step back and thinking, right, I'm going to have a bit of time, kind of get my head out of the markets, they're trying to recuperate that money, and then you can end up in really, really terrible financial situations. So I think it's just doing something that isn't anything to do with obviously trading or NFTs or anything like that. Just being completely out of that zone for, like you say, maybe 30 minutes, an hour, can definitely help and give you like a fresh perspective and a new set of eyes, should I say.
I always like, meditation's a big one for me. I also like my audiobooks, listening to audiobooks, or, when things are really bad, you just open up Instagram, go to the reels and look at some funny memes for a while. That's kind of my go-to for it. So,
Yeah.
so we are going to open this space up. So if anyone wants to jump on stage and kind of share their experience with, controlling themselves in the market, crypto does a lot of times it's synonymous with gambling. And as you said, you make a bad trade or you get rugged and you try and chase those losses, just like you would a gambler. And it's something that you have to really take into account, and you really need a plan and stick to it, and know that, not every plan works, and, you have to formulate a new plan and figure it out and think it through before you act again. So on your spaces, 750 spaces, I can imagine, you've had quite a few guests. Have you had guests that are, in the industry, like mental health professionals, anything like that?
Absolutely. I did want to make just one more point as well, which it made me aware of it when you were speaking. I think as well, just trading with emotions as well. I think that can be quite a big one. Obviously, if you've got like a set trading mythology or whatever, if you're if that's being impacted by you trading on emotions, obviously you're not following it with that kind of just peaceful mindset. And I've now I've said that, I've completely forgot the last question you said. Apologies. Could you repeat that?
I was going to say, do you often have like mental health professionals join you on this, or do you find this as more of like a pub group that kind of gets together and just discusses, and there's no kind of restrictions, or no one's judging or anything like that?
Yeah, we've had discussions with professionals, and being a charity, we do rely on volunteers, and we do have quite a few mental health professionals within the organisation. My background, obviously, I'm not a mental health professional, but I'm coming from the area of lived experience, so I just share like like how I've navigated certain difficulties in my own life. And I think this is a good thing about peer support. I think we're all experts in our own lives to some degree. Um, and what we've found as well is that a lot of people who do attend the spaces are also doing like traditional therapy as well. So what they've found is a lot of the times after they've had a session, they'll actually come in the space to kind of talk through and process that session with obviously people who've been in similar situations. But we have had like mental health professionals. We've done like spaces with Dr. Heath. I do remember not too long ago we did a space with Solve Care as well. There was another party there, but I can't remember off the top of my head who it was.
Yeah, it was
But
a
yeah, I
local bit
think
buddy.
yeah, I was just going to say, but I think as well, it just like I said, I think in the terms of what we're doing, like I said, we don't offer advice, and it is good to have the mental health professionals within our organisation. Obviously, if anything seems a bit out of hand, I can refer to them and get some professional feedback. But at the same time, I think this is the beauty of it. It's just people sharing stories, and if that can help people navigate through their own life just through hearing that stories, we definitely from the feedback we've heard is that it can help.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's good to not feel alone in situations, especially during lockdown. That is a terrible time for a lot of people. So you spoke about the NHS earlier and the long wait time for mental health. Has that wait time gotten better? Do you know?
It has slightly improved. I think one of the main issues with COVID was a lot of people who haven't necessarily struggled too much with mental health. A lot of people were experiencing like mental health. Well, I don't like to say symptoms, but just mental health struggles for the first time. So I think there was a lot of backlog from that. A lot of people were suffering from anxiety, depression. But the wait times have definitely decreased, but they are still huge wait times. And it's kind of one of them, unless you how the UK works is it's basically when you pay tax, a percentage of your tax is going to support the NHS, but to get kind of anywhere fast, you need to be looking to pay private, and I mean with inflation and everything, that is quite a difficult thing for a lot of people at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I lived in the U.S. for most of my life, but I was actually born in England. And in the U.S., part of your tax money doesn't go to healthcare; it just goes to the military. So it's not very helpful. But I feel kind of silly for asking this, and I should know this. But where would someone find a resource if I was having like a mental crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we do the peer support spaces, but we obviously we're not crisis lines or anything like that. But whenever we do host spaces, we make sure every single space that we have pinned in the nest international crisis numbers. So we've got numbers for just about every major like country. So we have obviously had people coming in with suicidal ideation, which is out of the scope of things we can like in terms of the legality issues as well. But we always refer people to crisis lines and then just kind of check up on them and make sure they are doing okay. But absolutely, if you are in crisis or you feel it's ever been too much, don't hesitate to ring these numbers. There are people specifically there to answer these calls, and they're trained up to answer these calls as well. So just don't ever feel if things are getting too much that people don't want to hear or they don't want to listen, because as I said, people are here and they do want to listen. And if you ever do feel like that yourself, if you go onto our pinned tweet, there's crisis lines in there as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have it in the Jumbotron. Yeah, so, you know, mental health is one of the most neglected things. You kind of see it boiling over in certain places. You have this lack of mental care that people do, and available options, and then you tie in financial troubles through inflation and things like that, and you suddenly find yourself, at a boiling point, and you see, kind of what happened in the UK recently with all the riots, and obviously that was spurred from an event, but things like that do happen when there's no real education and no real commitment to mental health on a regular basis. And I'm curious, through all of your spaces, what kind of like daily mental health things do you do that kind of keep you on the right track and make sure that you are checking in with yourself?
Oh, great. I can't say great question, Mike. Yeah, this is a big one for me. I'm like, I consider myself, obviously doing this space and stuff, I consider myself quite an empathetic person, but with the nature of what we do, obviously you're always hearing people at like really difficult times in their lives. It is quite hard sometimes not to take this on myself, so I always make sure that I'm kind of keeping in track with my own routines. I've found a big indicator for me that things may be slipping is my routines always go first. Like, I'm quite consistent with my routine, and when I start to see it slipping, that's when I notice maybe I need to take that step back. And it actually happened 2 weeks ago. I was kind of feeling myself slipping a bit, and at the same time, I feel like if I'm not in a good place mentally, I can't provide adequate support for other people. There's a good phrase: you can't pour from an empty cup. So I actually took a week off a couple of weeks ago just to kind of get myself balanced mentally as well. And I think that's it as well. Just kind of setting your own boundaries. Obviously, I host the spaces for anybody struggling, but I always make it clear that my support is offered through the space. I can't really do anything outside of the space, because one, I'm not qualified, and it's kind of out of my scope, and then that starts to impact my own mental health. So I think a huge one for me is just keeping boundaries and sticking to them, and just kind of keeping in a routine. They're the huge ones for me. And then if you do notice yourself kind of slipping, just don't be too hard on yourself for like having that step back. And I know, especially within like the Web3 NFT crypto scene, like you said earlier, you can a couple of days off, you feel like, oh no, I've missed everything. But as as we all know, the markets are always there, and you just got to look after yourself to carry on for another day. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's the kind of, I see on the pinned post, you're talking about getting over the stigma. And I think about, in Web3, you you lose to a trade, or, something wrong happens, you get hacked, and people immediately point the finger at you and say, well, it's because you did this, it's because you were dealing with those cryptocurrencies and things like that. And I think a lot of strong men and strong women, they see their mental health issues as something they can overcome themselves, and it's not a big issue. When I think about getting mental health, or getting, help with my mental health, I think of people who have lost their parents or gone through something extremely tragic. And, so it is harder to think, oh, well, I should probably check in, and I should probably, join one of these groups and talk about some of the issues going on, and not let it build up on the inside. So what kind of tricks do you use to help people get over that stigma of reaching out for help?
Yeah, another great question. I think especially as well, I think hindsight's a beautiful thing. I think once you've got to that position or someone can kind of see you there, it's okay. It's easy for them to kind of say, well, if you didn't do that, well, if you didn't do that. But obviously, when you're living it in the present moment, it's completely different. But in terms of breaking the stigma, I think just talking about mental health, and I'll use an example from the last bull cycle we had, and I'm going to relate it to NFTs as well. Obviously, the degen life. I mean, at the peak of the bull, people were. It was like a badge of honor not to go to sleep, and just to not essentially care too much about your mental health. And people even started like releasing projects based on just not sleeping and staying up, trying to find these mints. And I think as well, it's kind of easy to jump on bandwagons, but a lot of the time, the people who may have been running these projects or pushing this kind of life were probably not actively living that life outside. But I think a lot of people kind of got sucked in, and because it was so normalized, it also created that stigma around Web3 and negative mental health. But I think the best way to kind of overcome it. I know, especially within like the crypto, there's some huge and just really welcoming communities. I think kind of getting to know people within your community who you can resonate with. But at the same time, people can kind of keep you in check as well. As I said, it's easy to be kind of trapped into an echo chamber and everyone's just encouraging each other. But I think just taking that step back or finding someone who you can just kind of check in with can definitely help. And I think just talking about mental health, I think the more we're honest about how we're feeling and what we're struggling with, the more it's going to be normalized. And then at the same time, we're all reducing that stigma and just kind of creating a ripple effect. And I think, as I was saying, people were actively encouraging like the degen. It's really hard to say, the degen life. Um, Obviously, if people are starting to positively look after their mental health, and you could even, I don't know, push it within the scene. I think a lot of people are going to start to follow that trend as well. So, I think just being mindful of what you're trying to like. I don't want to say push, but what you like pushing on others, um, at the same time, and just try and be that change, I guess.
That's really cool. Now, over 750 different X spaces, I can imagine you've seen people or spoken to people, I should say, from all over the world. What kind of cultural differences have you seen when it comes to dealing with mental health?
Yeah, we. This is what I love about Twitter and obviously the spaces. We get people from all over the world. We get people from Serbia, India, China, you name it. There's probably someone who's hopped in from these spaces. Um, but I think obviously there are like cultural differences, and we do try to keep like politics and religion out of the space. Obviously, we can't say and you can't say that, but just kind of keep being mindful of others who are in the room. Um, Yeah, and but what I've actually found with the time doing it, it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, your colour, your race, your sexuality. None of that matters. We're all dealing with similar issues wherever you are in the world, and at the same time, we're all struggling with mental health. So I think if we use obviously mental health to kind of bring people together, I think you'll find that people are not too different. It doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah, I think about, crypto media, especially, social media. They can be very harsh on you. If you come out and you say, I lost money on this trade, some people will be supportive, especially if it's your own community on X. But if you were to go to Reddit and say, I lost money on this coin, people are brutal. They're just like, why are you so stupid? Why didn't you do your research? This is on you. Even for hacks, people will comment and be like, why did you give them access to your wallet? Like, why are you so stupid? And I feel like social media is the antithesis of mental health. Would you agree? Do you think social media is having a big impact on people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up a great point. I mean, look at any trading account who's got a large following. Um, I'll sit 5 minutes and wait for you to show them a trade that they've lost. Um, I think just having the honesty within trades, that's going to it's going to make things more. trying to word it right. Obviously, you're showing the darker side as well as the good side. I mean, say you're new to the trading scene, you follow someone who's a big account, you're like, oh, look at them, they're just making money all the time, no care in the world. But if you actually like spent a day in that person's life, it's probably a completely different story. So I think if people can just start being more honest on social media about maybe like I said, like bad trades that they're having, or like any like feelings of struggling that they may be going through, I think just leading by example and using your following for good, as opposed to just kind of promoting and chilling things, I think that can definitely help. And you're also, if you're approaching things like that, I think you're going to attract a lot more of a community that's going to help each other, should I say? But I do completely agree. Just as well, just how with like how memes are and how things can go viral. It's so easy to jump on bandwagons, and you usually find a lot of the times the things that do go viral are quite negative things. I mean, this is taking it back years and years ago, but a prime example. I don't know if anyone, too many people remember, but there was a guy called Chris Tucker, and basically it was when Britney was going through quite a difficult time, and he'd done that video just kind of saying leave Britney alone. And obviously he didn't expect to get the views that he did and for it to go viral. And then suddenly he's like shot into stardom overnight, but not necessarily in a positive light. And his life got completely ripped apart just from a like 10-second clip that he posted. So it's so easy to jump on negative bandwagons with social media. But just I think just take that step back and just kind of think what other people in that position must be feeling themselves. Just having a bit of empathy.
Yeah, I think about that quite a bit. I saw a post about, how different generations partied. And I think about when I was young and used to go out and go to parties and have a bit too much to drink and make a fool of myself. And I think, that's fine. If somebody took a photo with their terrible camera, that's one thing. But, nowadays, if a kid goes out and they have a bit too much to drink, they're 4K high definition video is going to be online and laughed at by millions of people, and it just destroys them. It's insane how the social media can be used to just, yeah, as you said, with the leave Britney alone quote. I still know that video. I can hear it in my head because I've seen it so many times. And yeah, it's a crazy world, especially for the younger generation. And I wonder how social media is going to play out and how mental health will play out with that.
Well, I'd like to think. Obviously, I know a lot of the negativity is pushed by the media. Obviously, negative news sells, so I think a lot of things are clickbaity as well, kind of lead you in with these negative things. But I'd like to think that people are starting to kind of see through that. So I'd like to think there's some maybe a counterculture forming of just people just being nice, and I think when there's that much negativity in the world at the moment, I think people are going to start slowly gravitating towards just looking at the positive things. I know so many people, especially people who come in our spaces, and just with like the algorithms within social media, like you may click on one post about I don't know, like a politics or something like that, and then next that's kind of in your algorithm, and you're sucked and drawn into these kind of like negative places and echo chambers. So I think as well, try and control what you're consuming in terms of content. I think just be mindful of like what you're clicking on. Like if you're clicking on a lot of negative things, the algorithm's gonna start showing you a lot more of these things. So I think as well, kind of being mindful of what you're consuming in terms of the content.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I went to one of your spaces, and my advice was to have multiple social media accounts, have a burner social media account, and on your main account, only look at positive things that make you happy. And if there's anything that is not part of that, click the I'm not interested button. And then on your alternate account, you can go ahead and follow politics and news and all the things that, you want to see as well, but you don't want that as part of your main feed. And that was my advice, because now when I go on to see my friends' posts, I'm not seeing anything negative there. It's just completely positive. And then when I do feel like a nice old doom scroll, I can switch to my other account and go look at, some dark memes and some politics and, videos like that. So
Yeah,
I was,
I was just going to say that's a great idea, but back over to you, mate.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, through my travels, I have been really humbled. Like, I have seen some things that shocked me to my core, and I'll give one example. Is I landed in Manila, and I was getting a cab out to like a restaurant, and I saw these kids all playing, and I thought, well, that's cool. They're all kind of near a bridge, and they're all playing by themselves. And when I was coming back from the restaurant, it was dark. I had stayed out for a little bit, and all these kids were sleeping on cardboard boxes around a fire. And it just broke me. Like, something inside of me was just like, oh my God, and from then on you think, wow, what in my life, my troubles, they're so insignificant, compared to something like that. And I'm wondering, through all the different spaces that you've done, have you encountered something like that just completely humbled you?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to divulge too much of what happens within the spaces. Obviously, that's people's own stories to tell. But
Of
just in
course.
terms of real life, I think one of the most humbling experiences I had was when I went to Italy. I'd gone to Rome, um, and I don't know if you've been to Rome, but it's a really, really beautiful place. There's like
I love it.
all these lavish shops. We went to the Trevi Fountain and stuff like that. But what kind of just knocked things into perspective for me was, so there was like a brand new, not even a mark on the window or anything. This lovely Gucci store. I think there was a Lacoste store right next door. Um, and no further than like 10 seconds away from that store, all these rich business people like coming in and out of the shop. There was a poor dude, and he literally had no legs, and he was pulling around, he pulling himself around on a skateboard trying to get like spare change. And it's just things like that just kind of like knock things into perspective of how difficult things are for some people. But I think as well, just seeing things like that, it can definitely encourage you just to preach more like gratitude within your own life. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, look, they've got all this, they've got all that, but then you're always comparing yourself to others. And I think when you're comparing yourself to others a lot, that's when where you can find difficulties within yourself. I think just preaching gratitude and being grateful for what you have. As you say, some people aren't even fortunate to have like a roof over their heads. Obviously, thinking of them poor kids that you were talking about. But I found as well in the spaces that if I'm having like a bad day, just hearing that I'm not the only one who's going through a bad day, just kind of it brings me back around as well. I'm like, yeah, I've had a bad day, but it's not necessarily a bad life. And I think within them moments, it's easy to think like something like you could have a bad trade or lose money on like a mint or something like that. And easy to just kind of get in that mindset of like, oh, whatever, everything kind of goes wrong for me. But as I said again, it might be a bad day, but it's not necessarily a bad life. So I think just preaching gratitude, and like you said, just seeing things out and about can definitely humble you. And I think if you do see things like this, just whenever you are kind of feeling like that, just take that step back and just remember like things may be bad at the moment, but they could potentially be a lot worse. So just kind of be grateful as much as you can for what you've got.
Yeah, definitely. I want to take off something that you said in there. In the US, they call it keeping up with the Joneses, is where your neighbor buys a new car. So then you think you need to buy a new car, and social media, you see all these, lavish jewelry, lavish lifestyles, everyone's just posting their A game, their best of reel. You're not seeing most people's downtimes and hardships and things like that. And it can really get to you. And for me, I sold everything I have and I live out of a backpack. So every time I think, oh, maybe I should go buy things, I'm like, I can't fit anything more in this backpack, so there's no sense in me wanting more. But what kind of tips and tricks do you have to get yourself out of that mentality of keeping up with the Joneses?
Well, I think this is the beauty of humanity. We're all completely unique in our own way, and I think that's the first step of why we can't really make comparisons. No other person has gone through the exact experiences at the exact time that you have in your life, and I think that's the beauty of what makes us all unique. So I think just kind of being true to yourself and just recognizing qualities within yourself. Obviously, some people are good at swimming, some people are good at football. But if you're an excellent swimmer and you start looking at the guy who plays football, thinking, "Oh, I wish I was good at football," you never know. He might be looking at you thinking, "Oh, I wish I was really good at swimming." Um, but I did want to throw it back to you. I'd love to know. I can understand there have been a lot of mixed emotions as kind of like pulling the trigger in terms of like selling everything, but I feel it might have been quite a scary time. But I've got a feeling it felt quite liberating as well. So I just wondered, just like what you were feeling in terms of your emotions when you did actually kind of decide I'm going to pack up and I'm going to leave, and how do you fit? Where do you think you are now as opposed to where you would have been if you hadn't have taken that step?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of the rule of nines when it comes to life, that every 9 years your life will drastically change. And for me, it was, and there's a good book on it. I can't remember the name of it, but if you Google the Rule of Nines life book, you'll probably find it. But it explains that as you're coming up to this next phase of 9 years, you kind of transition into something else. And I read that book and I loved it because, when I was 18, I went through a lot of hardship. I don't want to really get into here, but when I hit 27, it was a huge change in my life. I was suddenly doing way better than I've ever done before. And I was approaching, the next nine. The next nine was coming up. And suddenly I was no longer teaching because of COVID. I left my teaching job. I got out of a long relationship. I needed to move because I was staying somewhere that, my best friend, he was getting married. He was going to move in with her. I couldn't afford a 2-bedroom apartment in San Diego by myself. That's insanity. And all these things were changing. And I thought about the 9 year plan and I thought, you know what? Let's just do it. I was originally born in England. I have a lot of family there. So my initial plan was just to go to England, for 6 months and then, see if I liked it over there, maybe move over there. And then it just turned into this. I looked at flights from England and I was like, wait a second, I can fly to Italy for $25, $30. Like, that's insane. And I just suddenly realized what is tying me down, And so I had a little bit of stuff left over in the US. Obviously, because I was moving, I kind of cleared a lot of it already, but I kind of cleared it all through that. And it was really liberating. As you get older, as a single guy, your friend group starts to thin out. You still have these friends, but now they're having families and kids, and they don't have enough time for you. And just went through COVID, which is very quiet, and you're alone a lot of the time. And just to travel and meet people all over the world, and now I have all these friends and people that I talk to online from all over the world. It's very liberating, and it was kind of like a big change for me. It felt like everything needed to change. And I did that once before when I was 18, and I felt like it was time again to do it again. And yeah, I was right. I love this lifestyle, and I can't see myself stopping anytime soon. And I did find a girlfriend along the way who now travels with me, and life is completely different. And I'm glad I took the big leap for that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. This is actually my first time hearing about the rule of nine. And next year will be my 36th birthday. So that will technically be my next nine. And just with what you were saying, I think it does kind of suit quite well. I mean, for me, my 20s were quite a difficult time. A lot of stuff happened when I was younger, but I think just in terms of mental health, a lot of things that happen when you're younger, you don't really start to process until you're in your late teens, early 20s. And for me, like all through that time was a very, very difficult time. and obviously you got to the age of 27, and I think just being in that bad place obviously pushed me to do what I'm doing with the mental health collective. But at the same time, I think within them 9 years, I've definitely seen myself like grow as a person and have felt that kind of shift. So I'm hoping like for my 36th birthday that I'm hoping this is when like kind of all the MHC can kick off and stuff. And for me, it was, I think, especially through my 20s and stuff, I never really had a purpose. And I think this is just from my own experience, but I feel a lot of the times when you are struggling with mental health, especially like depression, I think for me it's because I never had a purpose, or like any purpose I did were kind of materialistic or something out to kind of benefit me. But since doing this and just hosting the spaces and just trying to devote my time to other people, I think that's when I've noticed that I've got a purpose essentially bigger than me. And I would, without blowing my own trumpet, I would argue that I'm quite good at doing it, and I get a lot myself out of helping other people. And it completely shifted my own perspective just on what other people are going through, and kind of just how I deal with things myself. So now I know about the rule of nine. I think it's all coming perfectly into my 36th birthday next year. So definitely thank you for sharing that. And as
Yeah.
well, just I was just going to say as well, I've noticed that myself, just kind of as you get older, a lot of friend groups can kind of part ways. And I know when you're like 14, 15, you were going to be best friends for life. And I think people just get older, they do their own things, they might have kids. I was lucky in terms of the kids that I had my first when I was 18. I've got three boys, with the eldest being 15 now. So I'm lucky in terms of they're growing up and they'll be leaving the nest soon. While a lot of my friends who kind of left it late, they've got like 2, 3 year olds, and I'm just thinking, better you than me, mate.
That's so good. Yeah, the rule of nine really does work with you having kids at 18. Now you come up to another big change. I highly recommend the book. I'll find it for you. And I love the point you made about goals, because that for me was one of the biggest drivers of me getting out of that. I was exactly the same in my 20s. I had no care for my life. I had no goals, no aspirations. And, I started reading a lot of like, I wouldn't say self-help books, whatever you call them, motivational books, but things that, and started making goals. And that was a big change in my life. Even now I write my goals out, whether it's financial goals or fitness goals or anything like that. Of course, it's a lot harder when you're traveling all the time. And, one of the things that was hardest for me is when you reach that goal, because you make this goal and you work toward it for years, and then you finally achieve it, and then you have that feeling of, what now? You have to restart and you have to set those goals again, and it's not as easy as you think to set the second round of goals. Have you ever encountered something like that?
I was just laughing as loud as I could with my mic muted because I'm exactly the same. I'm for me as well. I'm one of them. When I do achieve the goal, I never really have that sense of accomplishment. It's like I know some people are like, "Wow, I've done all that. Take that step back." But for me, it's kind of like, right, that's over with. What do I want to do now? But I think just writing goals down, like you say, is huge. And as well, I know if you do write down goals or you set yourself goals, I think setting yourself achievable goals, it's easy to, like I'll use an example for the gym. Say you haven't been to the gym for 2 or 3 years, something like that. Um, and I don't know, say you were deadlifting 200 kilograms or something. If you've not done something for a long time, or it's your first time doing something like that, it's easy to set over realistic, like overestimating like your goals kind of thing. And so you could have maybe not been to the gym for 3 years and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go straight back in and try and lift my working weight when I was like training heavily. And then if you can't do it, you just feel like you just feel sad, don't you? Like, oh, I thought I was going to achieve that. So I think in terms of setting goals, just setting manageable goals as well. And I think if you're setting small, you could set yourself long-term goals, but I think setting yourself small goals as well, then you like you say, you're noticing you're ticking stuff off, and you can see that progression, especially if you're writing down, you can see all that progression on paper. But yeah, I am exactly the same, but it's just I never have a sense of accomplishment either.
You just nailed me on the head. I was actually like a power lifter, and I was squatting 200 kilograms, and um, I obviously I slowed down as I got a little bit older. But about a year ago, I was in Georgia, and I was running for a cab, and I didn't see a stairwell that was completely painted black with no streetlights, and I broke a rib. And since then, I actually haven't really. I went to the gym like twice in the last year, and it is kind of it's that feeling of, oh, I gotta start all over, and now I'm way older, that kind of thing. So yeah, I feel that quite a bit. But I wanted to ask you, what kind of do you have any book recommendations that you've been reading or that you've read that you would kind of give to, we have kind of a younger audience, kind of a university audience, and we want them to set goals and do better. So I'm curious, do you have any book recommendations?
Ooh, difficult one. I do struggle to read quite a lot. I've got well, not obviously, but I've got ADHD, so it can be quite difficult for me to read sometimes, just kind of keeping my focus. So I haven't really got any particular books offhand. But I think I'm more. I just I think I get a lot from just kind of, I don't know, just being mindful of the content that I'm consuming. I know it's not necessarily books, but just being like aware of what I'm wanting to learn or whatever kind of thing. But no, offhand, I've definitely not got any books off the top of my head. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, it's all right. At first it was very hard for me to sit down and read because I just really hadn't done it since school. I started with audiobooks, and then, I found a book that I kind of enjoyed and got into it. It took me forever to read that first book. And yeah, it's just like going to the gym. If you think you're going to sit down and read for an hour every day, you're having a laugh. You're going to fall asleep. Yeah, so you got to start with that small. I'm going to read for 2 minutes. I'm going to read for 3 minutes. I'm going to read for 5 minutes. It is something you have to build up. But yeah, I can definitely understand if you have, ADHD and things like that. It can be hard. But yeah, so let's once again cover how people can join and be a part of your X Spaces and potentially participate.
Absolutely. Cheers, mate. Yeah, I'll just kind of do a quick rundown. So if you do want to join one of our spaces, we host them the same time, Monday to Wednesday. Um, we were hosting 7 days a week at one point, but a few of our hosts have had to take like a bit of a backseat for their own mental health, which we completely support. So we're just running Monday to Wednesday at the moment, and that will be it'll be 7 till 8:30 p.m. GMT. I think that's 3 till 4:30 p.m. EDT.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm sure you're better with clocks than me, mate. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah,
But
GMT is 1 hour ahead of UTC, by the way.
see, this is what I mean, and this is where I'm going off a tangent here. So I only recently discovered, and I'm from the UK. I always thought it was GMT, and I recently discovered that there's a BST, which I thought was GMT originally. But yeah, it's confusing for me, and especially when the US clocks change. But just in terms of joining, yeah. So just we host the same time every day. If you follow this account, we'll do a daily question, and within that question will be links to any spaces we've got that day. We've also got a website, and on every Monday around lunchtime for me, we'll put all the spaces on there so you can kind of set reminders yourself. If you do want to hop in and join, there's absolutely no pressure to speak. We don't put any pressure on the audience members. We know some people just kind of like listening. Um, so if you do want to come, you're more than welcome to come, check in. Obviously, we don't provide like advice, but I think if you are struggling and you feel like you might benefit, just hop in. We've got a space in 5 minutes that we'll be doing. Just hop in and just kind of sit around and see, just kind of get a vibe for what we're doing. I think a lot of the times it can be quite daunting the first time you attend, but I think just hearing other people speak, it kind of builds your own confidence up as well. But yeah, if anyone does want to join, you're more than welcome. And as I said, we're running Monday to Wednesday at the moment, and we start 5 minutes from now, Monday to Wednesday.
Wonderful. Remember, everyone, your mind is your greatest asset. You need to stay calm during the crazy markets. You need to stay focused. You need to have a plan. And without that, you can get wrecked really bad. So take care of yourself, everyone. I want to give a big thank you to Lewis Finn for joining as Mental Health Collective. You guys can join their spaces in 5 minutes or 4 minutes, as he said. And yeah, thank you guys all for joining us today. Have fun, stay safe, and I hope to speak to you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Cheers, everyone. And thanks again, Mike. Great space and great to connect with you again.